Hi everyone, good morning. Just bear with me. Just going to check that this has gone live to the group. Hope you're all well this morning. And yeah, good. Okay. So for some reason, my camera right now is zoomed in more than it is usually. And I'm not sure what setting I've changed in order to make it do that. So just going to have to work with that today. Today I want to teach a lesson that looks at how we develop our ability to sit. So I've titled the lesson "Sitting and Crawling," and one of the things that I think kind of comes out really well from the Feldenkrais method is the understanding of how we develop as children and how that relates to movement. Today's lesson, I want to look at this kind of initial phase of life where we come upright, lifting our body up in space away from the floor. And then we, because we're managing the weight of our head, then we bring our arms forwards to support us. And eventually we can then sit and support our heads without any arm support. That obviously has a big relationship with crawling and forwards movement. So we're going to look at those things today a little bit. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just close your eyes and very gently just lift and lower your right shoulder a few times. Just lift and lower your right shoulder and see if you can feel that your shoulder blade at the back of your the back of the right side of your body is sliding across the back of your body. So you're lifting and lowering your right shoulder, just very gently, very slowly. See if you can keep breathing as you do that. Just do it a few times. Feel how that feels for you this morning. How are your shoulders feeling? Does it feel comfortable for you to be lifting and lowering your shoulder? And can you bring your attention to the shoulder blade as you do it? Okay, and then have a little rest. So a friend of mine showed me someone saying that because of all the increase in screen time and sitting, that her shoulders were aching. And I think that it's something that we're all going through, this kind of change in lifestyle, and kind of how we approach it and how we approach looking after ourselves during this period, I think is really important. So that's kind of, using these lessons as a way of like supporting yourself, kind of having a little bit of self-care or self-maintenance in your day. Okay, so just begin to lift your left shoulder now and just do that a few times. Lift the left shoulder towards the ceiling in the direction of the head. And just see if you can feel that the shoulder blade at the back of the body sliding along the ribs. And maybe you've got some contrast now because you can feel how that felt on the right side. How does your left shoulder feel in comparison with your right shoulder? Just a very small movement, lifting the shoulder, bringing it down, seeing if you can feel the movement of the shoulder blade as it comes up and down against the ribs at the back of the body. Good. Notice if you've got a tendency for the shoulder to come forwards or backwards instead of up. See if you can keep it very specifically upwards and downwards. Okay. And let it go and have a little rest. And now see if you can move your shoulder upwards without actually lifting the shoulder off the ribs. So see if you can make a movement with your body that makes the shoulder lift upwards very slightly in space. Just do that a few times, very comfortably. So as you can see that how I'm doing it is I'm lengthening on the right side of my body to make my right shoulder higher, and I'm shortening on the left side of my body. So just try that movement a few times. Lifting the shoulder, the point of the shoulder, just by shortening one side and lengthening the other side. How does that feel? This is a movement that involves the ribs, the folding and the opening of the ribs. So maybe you feel that has an area of you that doesn't get a lot of attention. Good. And then let it go. And then try the same thing on the left side. So just lifting the left shoulder without kind of like articulating the shoulder, without kind of separating the shoulder from the torso. Lifting the left shoulder by moving the torso. So again, I'm shortening on the right side of my body and I'm lengthening on the left side of my body. Just do it a few times. See if you can keep breathing. Feel what it's doing in your ribs. Okay, good. And take a little rest. And just have your eyes closed. Just feel how your shoulders are sitting now. So one of the things that happens as we kind of develop movement as a baby is we obviously need to organize our head. Our head is the biggest challenge that we face. As we bring ourselves up in the world, away from the floor, at first, we're very much dependent on the limbs for support. So if you were to sit a baby up prematurely, before it had learned the function or use of its arms, it's quite likely that that baby would just fall over to the side because it wouldn't have a way to support itself. As that baby develops, it learns that it can put its hands out one by one or both together in order to find support and stability for its head in an upright position. You can then see how that begins to go into crawling. Okay. So what I want you to do is lift one shoulder and then lift the other shoulder. And imagine with your eyes closed that you're making a crawling movement with your arms. You're putting one down. If you want, you can have your hands up in this position, and you could imagine putting one arm down and then the other arm down. I'm going to do it without that. So I'm doing two things at the same time. I am taking my shoulder away from the body, but I'm also lengthening that side of the body. So both at the same time, lengthening the right side and taking the shoulder away from the ribs on the right side, like I'm reaching out with the shoulder. Okay, and then try it on the other side and just see if you can kind of get a very light backwards and forwards movement. Taking one shoulder higher and then the other shoulder higher. And with your eyes closed, imagine that this is kind of like a walking movement with the shoulders, that you're gently walking forwards in some way. And if this is difficult, can you tell me in the chat? So maybe actually there's a bit of backwards and forwards at this point as well. There's not just up. Up would be like this, but actually I'm taking one forwards and one backwards a little bit as well. Okay, so let's try that. A few times, just take your right shoulder forwards. Take your right shoulder forwards and feel how your left shoulder goes backwards as you take your right shoulder forward. Take your right shoulder forwards and back, and just let that turning affect your body. Maybe you can feel that effect on the whole of the spine. Just let the right shoulder come forwards. As the right shoulder comes forwards, the left automatically goes backwards. And come back to the middle. And a few times do the same thing on the left side. Very slowly, take the left shoulder forwards. Feel how as you take the left shoulder forwards, the right shoulder goes backwards. And see if you can keep your face in the middle as you do this. So when we organize ourselves for movement, we've got our head and our eyes pointing in a specific direction. So see if you can pick a direction on the wall in front of you and just keep your face and your eyes pointing in that direction. As you take the left shoulder forwards a few times. Okay. Have a little rest. And maybe you feel your shoulder girdles getting a little lighter, a little easier as you're kind of moving it in this way. And just close your eyes and imagine that you're on all fours. Or you can imagine that your hands are out on a surface in front of you. Just imagine that you're kind of placing one arm down and then the other arm down. Walking your shoulders forwards, one by one. Lifting, placing it down. Lifting, placing it down. So that you're going to feel that you're kind of walking your shoulders away from you in some way. Okay, good. Have a little rest your shoulders. And now there's another element that is important and you're thinking about crawling, and that's what the pelvis is doing. So, I mean, we can think about this in terms of our evolutionary past. That provides another kind of level of depth to it. That when we're crawling on all fours, we're kind of very similar to quadrupedal animal that we were back in our evolution. So something walking on four legs. And you feel like the movement of walking on four legs could be a bit different to the movement of walking on two legs. And maybe you've got examples in your life of like a dog or a cat or a horse, and you see how they walk. And maybe you see your dog, when it gets excited, it starts to wag its tail. So what I'd like you to do is very gently just begin to lift the left side of the pelvis away from the chair. Very gently, very lightly. And you don't need to do it a lot. It's more like a gentle movement of the body to the other side. So as I shift my weight, I translate my weight over to the left side, then it allows me to be able to lift my right side of my pelvis away from the chair very slightly. It's not a large amount. It might not even lift, but it lightens. So you feel for yourself that you can make this movement, taking your body weight over to the left and lifting the right side of the pelvis. At the same time, as you do that, notice what's happening in your shoulders. As you lift the right side of your pelvis away, notice if one shoulder goes forwards and one shoulder goes backwards. Notice if one shoulder gets higher and the other gets lower. And just do that movement a few times. See if you can make it so it's like a kind of rocking movement over to the left side of the pelvis, very gently lifting the right side of the pelvis. And you feel that this is obviously going to be working your spine. And then maybe you could get some senses, like if you were on all fours, that this might be a part of the movement, of the walking movement on all fours. Okay, then take a rest. Just come back very gently, lift your left shoulder, lift your right shoulder. Take your right shoulder forward, take your left shoulder forward. Just see if that's still as light as it could be. Take a moment, just feel your breathing. Feel how you're sitting on the chair. And then just begin to take your weight, the weight of your body, over to the right side now, so that you could lift the left side of your pelvis very gently. And notice as you lift the left side of the pelvis away from the chair, what's happening in your shoulders. Which shoulder is going up? Which shoulder is going down? Which shoulder is going forwards? Which shoulder is going backwards? Just do it a number of times. Take your time, play with it. It doesn't matter if it completely lifts away from the chair. It really doesn't matter. What's more important is that you're taking your weight over to the right and in some way lightening the left side so that it could lift up. And maybe you feel that there's a difference in the ability of the left side to lift than the right side that we did a second ago. Maybe this isn't an easy movement in sitting. Just do it a couple more times. I taught a lesson yesterday, a full-length lesson, Feldenkrais lesson, called Mobilizing the Pelvis. And the theory behind it is that all of the big muscles of the body are connected with the pelvis and the upper legs and the abdomen. And that's where really we generate our power. So if that part of us doesn't move very well, then we're not going to be very capable. So these lessons are really kind of designed in some way to make these parts of us that maybe are a little immobile, more mobile. And that actually makes us more capable and brings more of our body, into our movement patterns. Okay, so now a few times I'd like you to swap over one side, lift the right side, and then come back and lift the left side. And just do it a few times. Go between the two if you can. See if you can make it so that you're walking. Some sense of walking on your pelvis. Lifting one side and then the other side. So I did say in the description that this may be a bit of a workout for the spine. But notice as you do this movement and you lift one side and then the other side, what's happening with the opposite shoulder and what's happening with the same side shoulder. So as I lift the right side, what's happening with the right shoulder and what's happening with the left shoulder? As I lift the left side, what's happening with the left shoulder and the right shoulder? And then just see if you can kind of gently take your time, do it slowly, go between one, go between the other. Good. Then take a rest. One of the ways that I've heard this particular movement being taught before is that you could walk one sitting bone forwards on the chair and then backwards on the chair. So why don't we try that? See if you can lift the one side of your pelvis and then take that side of the pelvis slightly backwards, and then lift that same side of the pelvis and take that side of the pelvis forwards. So that you've got this kind of like walking the pelvis backwards and forwards movement going on. If that isn't clear, you can let me know in the comments and I can give you instruction again. So you're lifting, so I'm taking my weight over to the left side, lifting the right side of my pelvis, and then taking it backwards slightly, as if I'm walking that side of the pelvis backwards, and then again taking my weight over to the left and walking it forward slightly. So a few times is going between walking the right side of the pelvis forwards and walking it backwards. And you can see that in order to do this, I have to move around on my screen quite a lot. Good. And then try the same thing on the left side. Can you lift the left side of the pelvis and walk it backwards, and lift the left side of the pelvis and walk it forwards? This is a bit of a challenge. Okay. And then take a rest. And then a few times, just lift the right shoulder and lift the left shoulder, and just see if that's changed at all. If you get some sense that the shoulders could walk now, and could you feel that movement, that walking movement, all the way down your spine into your pelvis? So that there's some sense that the kind of the wings of the pelvis could be involved in this movement as well. Okay, so what I want you to do, let's see if we can coordinate it. So that as you take the left shoulder forwards, you're taking the right side of the pelvis backwards. And as you're taking the right shoulder forwards, you're taking the left side of the pelvis backwards. So you're going between one side and the other. Okay, and then take a rest. And now go back to what we were doing earlier. See if you can lift the right side of the right shoulder without lifting the shoulder away from the ribs. It's more like a side bending movement. You're shortening the left side in order to lengthen the right. And then go on the other side and see if you can kind of go shorten one side, lengthen the other, shorten one side, lengthen the other. And could you correspond this? Could you tie it in? So as I shorten the left side, lengthen the right side, could you lift the left side of the pelvis at the same time? So that as you drop one shoulder, you take the pelvis up, that same side pelvis, I drop my right shoulder, the right side of my pelvis is lifting up, and then I drop my left shoulder and the left side of my pelvis is lifting up. So that I'm kind of making this oscillation movement. And just try it. Just try it. Have a bit of fun. Morning, Kathy. See if you can do this. See if you can kind of play with it so that you can coordinate bringing one shoulder down and lifting that side of the pelvis. And then if you have your head and your eyes pointing forwards, imagine that you're walking in somewhere, you're crawling along the floor. If you imagine that you're kind of, in a baby position and you've got all fours on the floor, you've got your knees on the floor, and that this movement is somehow allowing you to walk forwards. Okay. And then come back to a natural sitting position for yourself. And then just very gently do the same thing, but do it really slowly. Feel that as I drop the right shoulder, I can lift the right side of the pelvis. And as I drop the left shoulder, I can lift the left side of the pelvis. And just think about what the spine's doing, how the spine is accommodating this movement. So you've got the kind of the big joints of the body, the shoulders and the hips, and they're doing this kind of interesting movement, coordinated movement. But the spine in the middle of that is kind of doing this interesting movement in order to facilitate this. So as you do that movement, just see if you can feel what the spine is doing. And think about balancing the head on top of the spine. Okay. And let go of any effort. Hopefully you and just feel how your head is sitting on your spine, and maybe you can feel down into your pelvis and feel how you're sitting on your pelvis as well. Has that changed during the course of the lesson? And as you go through the days, you take this into, whatever you do next. Maybe you want to take a little walk. Just feel how this sort of sense of coordination, communication between the movement of the pelvis and the movement of the shoulders kind of, organizes the spine in some way, so that there's some interesting kind of pattern to walking or crawling that's allowing the body to move in this particular way to make us go forwards. But interestingly, and hopefully you can feel that we did all of that without our arms and without our legs. So that movement of walking or that movement of crawling really originates in the middle of the body. It originates in the pelvis, it originates in the spine, and it originates in the shoulders. So the limbs, the legs and the arms are just an extension of that movement. And as you sit there now, just feel how how free your head is. If you want to look around the room a little bit, and does your head balance very comfortably, very easily on top of your spine? Is there some sense that the weight of the head is organized over the body below it? Okay, so hopefully that's the case for you guys. This particular exploration, like I said at the beginning, is really to do with like understanding the developmental process and how we organize our bodies in gravity as a child. Firstly, by using our arms to support our heads, because we haven't learned how to use our body, our torso, to balance our head above it. So hopefully that lesson's kind of giving you an inkling into how your head can be more balanced over your spine, and how your spine's movement could support the head being balanced in many different positions. Okay, so thank you for watching. Later on today, I think the video version of the podcast that I recorded with a good friend of mine, Jamie, who I've known for a number of years, who's got his own podcast called Dosed. So later on today, the YouTube version of that's going to become available. So I will have a link on my page. I think it's probably about 9 o'clock. It's going to premiere tonight. So I'll post a link to that if anyone's interested in watching it. You can obviously listen to the audio version of that already. Just other information. So on Saturday, I have a full-length Feldenkrais class. And the class's focus is self-regulation, teaching us how to look after ourselves, take care of ourselves, slow down, and learn to listen to our bodies. So that's coming up on Saturday, 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. And then Sunday, I teach a Qigong class from 9:45 till 11. If you're interested in either of those, you can go over to my Facebook group, which is in the description, and the information is there. Okay, so I hope you have a nice day. I will see you tomorrow at 11, and enjoy walking or crawling. Okay, take care, bye.